Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the Slouching towards Thatcham podcast, a podcast that features the very best writing from UK parent bloggers. It's Tim here. I blog at Slouching towards Thatcham about what it's like to be a father of three. Every week I feature another parent blogger who talks about and reads one of their favourite posts, and I do the same with one of mine. It's as simple as that. Bite-sized chunks of blogging brilliance. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Martyn, who writes the blog Inside Martyn's Thoughts. Hi there, Martyn.
Hello.
So, to start with, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and the blog?
I'm Martyn. I have two boys, William and James, and I'm a co-parenting dad, and I have the boys for half the week, and I also homeschool them. So my blog is a parenting blog, but it's got a lot of work around homeschooling and the homeschooling activities that we do, and my journey as a dad with them.
Hey, that's great, thanks. So today you're going to be reading a post that talks about your muscular dystrophy. So could you just give us a little bit of background to that?
I've always kind of mentioned that I'm disabled. And it became quite shocking, I think, for a lot of people who met me at the blogging event, Brit Mums, earlier this year. They seemed quite surprised at how disabled I was. And I was quite shocked by that myself because I've never hidden it. So I realised that I needed to actually be open and honest and write about how my muscular dystrophy affects me as a person and as a parent.
Okay, so in that case, let me hand the reins over to you. Away you go.
This week, I've decided to do the same thing and start talking more honestly about my muscular dystrophy. Despite openly talking about it at times, I think quite a few bloggers were shocked by how disabled I really am after Brit Mums. I think the misunderstanding came from two different points. Although I mentioned it, I haven't really spoken openly and gone into detail about it. I blog about everything that I do with the boys, from arts and crafts to long days out. Within this, I suppose, from the outside, you would mistake me as for being a healthy, active dad. Before I write in detail, though, I want to make one thing clear. I don't play on my disability and definitely don't seek any pity. It is part of me, just as my right foot is part of me. And because of that, I don't brandish it about. For me, I would like people to see me for me, rather than the guy who has muscular dystrophy. There are a few different types of muscular dystrophy. I have a strand called facioscapulohumeral dystrophy, or FSHD. What is FSHD? FSHD initially affects the skeletal muscles of the face, the scapula, and the upper arms. Symptoms may develop in early childhood and are usually noticeable in the teenage years, with 95% of affected individuals manifesting the disease by the age of 20. It is a progressive skeletal muscle weakness that usually develops in other areas of the body as well. Often the weakness is asymmetrical. Life expectancy is normal, but up to 20% of the affected individuals become severely disabled and eventually must use a wheelchair as well as other aids. The symptoms: facial muscular weakness, inability to whistle, decreased facial expressions, and difficulty pronouncing the letters M, B, and P. Shoulder weakness, difficulty working with arms raised, sloping shoulders. Abnormal heart rhythm. Unequal weakening of the biceps, triceps, deltoids, and lower arm muscles. Loss of strength in abdominal muscles, and eventual progression to the legs. How it affects me. I am categorised in the 20% of the individuals who have it severely. Every muscle in my body is under strain, and subsequently my muscles twitch. This, as stated above, affects every muscle. If I am walking and twitch, I subsequently fall over, or if I'm carrying something, then I drop it. FSHD, as mentioned before, affects the body with every muscle weakness. What the above doesn't tell you is that the progressive weakness, ultimately all of my muscles are deteriorating and getting weaker. Eventually, my legs will get to the point that I'll no longer be able to withstand my weight, however light I make myself. The safest option is to use a wheelchair. My arms, like my legs, will deteriorate and no longer be able to lift or carry things. There is no muscle shape around the shoulder or upper arm. I cannot raise my arm higher than my chest. On this arm, I have trouble lifting anything like a cup of tea or heavier. It already affects my speaking, and I am known to slow my words, and especially when I'm tired. Like the arms and legs, this deterioration will happen to the point that my facial muscles will stop working. Every single day I wake up in pain. My muscles don't feel refreshed. First thing in the morning, they still ache. They ache and feel tense. Every muscle in my body feels like it is trapped within a clamp, and by the end of the day, they feel hot. This is then coupled with joint pain that goes hand in hand with what's happening with my muscles, and every joint feels like someone is pushing a large object between the two joining bones. My health will get to the point where I potentially become immobile and possibly lose the ability to talk. If you are really observant, you will notice that I stated that every muscle twitches. That does include muscles of my heart and lungs and could lead to serious medical attacks. I choose my life. You would have noticed that I said it would be safer for me to be in a wheelchair. However, it has been recommended that I do this. But as it will continually get weaker, this would speed up the progression. Every day I live with pain. Every day I live with the fear that my muscles around my heart and my lungs will twitch to the point that I could die. Every day I disprove that this is my last day. I walk because I still can. I go out with the boys on trips so they have an enriched life. I do what I do every day and get up and do more. I disprove the doctors on every prognosis they have given. According to them, I should have died 4 or more times now and be a lot weaker than I am. This is my life, and I am happy. I am happy because I get out. I see people, play with my boys, educate them. I love and enter relationships. I work and teach children. I do this because I will always defy what my health decides and find a different way of doing it. My life is so much more than my health issues. I am kind, caring, intelligent, creative, cheeky, and will do anything for anyone. I try not to worry about the what-ifs. Instead, I live in the now. Today, I touch people's lives for who I am, as much as they touch mine. Today, I am me. Nelson Mandela said, "What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is the difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead."
Thanks, Martyn. I think that anyone who's ever met you will agree that while muscular dystrophy is undeniably part of you, it in no way defines who you are as a person. So, to me, you're a great example of how none of us should allow ourselves to be constrained or defeated by any of the obstacles we face in life, no matter how major. And it's great that you've taken the time to help people understand what living with muscular dystrophy is all about. So, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on this week's podcast.
You're welcome.
If you want to read more of Martyn's writing, go to his blog at InsideMartynsThoughts.com or follow him on Twitter at Mr_Kitsney, Kitney. I'll attach blog and social media links on the show notes over on SlouchingTowardsThatcham.com. Like Martyn, I also have my own health issues, although nothing that physically affects me to anywhere near the same extent. Some of that's a natural part of getting older. It's noticeable how easily I get niggling little aches and pains these days. But I also had a bit of a shock to the system 5 years ago, shortly after Toby was born, when I received a diagnosis that has forced me into changing some of my lifestyle choices. So this post is called An Epiphany of Sorts. I have posted previously about being increasingly conscious of the fact that I'm getting older and increasingly susceptible to health issues. Not least the small matter of, dying one day. I have also written about my latest attempt to lose weight and the surprising ease with which I've been succeeding, £14 in less than 7 weeks as of this morning. This morning, I've been to the doctor and discovered that the two are not unrelated. I have diabetes. With hindsight, I cannot believe I hadn't put 2 and 2 together already. I have a family history of diabetes. My mother developed type 2 in her 50s, and having just done a quick bit of research on the subject, it's clear that I've developed pretty much every symptom of the condition, the vast majority of which I was already aware of. Although, in my defence, you can also put many of them down to having recently had a baby. It's not the end of the world. According to Diabetes UK, 2.6 million people in the UK, that's about 4% of the population, have been diagnosed with diabetes, with a further 500,000 undiagnosed. The course of treatment, a healthy lifestyle, supplemented by medication, insulin in the case of type 1, is long established. And as long as I'm sensible about things, historically, not always one of my strongest suits admittedly, there's no reason why I should worry unduly. After all, my mother's still going strong nearly 20 years after her initial diagnosis. Sir Steve Redgrave isn't doing so badly either. There are many, many worse things I could have been diagnosed with, which would have had a far more limiting impact on my lifestyle and life expectancy, so you won't catch me complaining about the hand I've been dealt. Maybe I could have prevented or delayed the onset of the condition by being a bit healthier over the last few years, but there's no way of knowing, and no point second-guessing myself. After all, with a family history of diabetes, I've known for a long time that I was at high risk of developing it. Now I do have the condition, all I can do is deal with it. In the meantime, I'm going to process the news internally and handle it the way I normally handle this sort of thing. For one day, I'm going to abandon the diet and I'm going to eat comfort food. Lots of it. Bring on the ice cream. Over 5 years on from writing this post, I'm still wrestling with the impact diabetes has enforced on both my diet and my general physical health. It's a difficult balance between taking actions to preserve my long-term well-being while still enjoying life. I'll be the first to admit I don't always make the best decisions, but at the same time, the battle goes on. It's up to me to ensure that it becomes a sustained fight rather than a rapid surrender. And that's it for this episode of the Slouching Towards Thatcham podcast. If you'd like to listen to either future or previous episodes, you'll find them published on the blog, and also on iTunes and various other podcasting sites. You can follow me on the blog at slouchingtowardsthatcham.com, on Twitter at ThatchamDad, and on various other social media channels. You'll find links to all of the above, plus Martyn's links, in the show notes on the blog. All that remains for me is to say thank you all for listening to this podcast, and hopefully you'll join me again next week. Until then, goodbye.